Oh, uh, in that case, I better put my other headphones on. I'll be amazed if anybody signs in right now because this is definitely a test. I've never done this before. It could be said in so many ways, but today I wanted to kind of go over one of the photos that I recently created on a recent flight, which was over the Franklin Mountains. And it was just absolutely majestic, man. This flight was killer. And I brought my GoPro. I brought everything along with me. That's not true. I brought my GoPro, and unfortunately, there was some sort of an error. And I seem to have these issues with GoPro every now and then. And I'm really tempted. I'm super tempted to try out a new camera. So let me go ahead and open up YouTube on my phone to see, just in case anybody chimes in. If not, it's not looking promising, but we're live. We're live now, according to this. Let me see. Yeah, we are. Okay, sweet. I'm gonna click into this. Hopefully, this will tell me if anybody joins in, and I'll be able to interact with you guys as I attempt to open up the photo editing software. And yeah, let's do it. I am going to start by doing the screen share and check out this photo that I managed to take from my iPhone. Isn't that crazy? It was an iPhone. I'm going to go ahead and share the whole screen, click over this, and then go boom, full screen on this. And that should do the trick. Okay, so here it is. This is from a few days ago, and the cloud cover for El Paso is something like this is something that is just so infrequent that when we get opportunities like this, you better get your ass up in the air because it is absolutely amazing. And it was actually right before I even made it through the clouds that the footage stopped. If you haven't seen it already, I did a video on my Facebook account, and it shows that moment of horror when the GoPro quit. And so, anywho's, I see this photo and I want to edit it and kind of make it fancy. There's a lot of people who do really they share a lot of photos on Facebook and they look really 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 cool. And for me, it's not like I want to necessarily make the image look different than it actually was. However, when I am filming something or photographing something, I just want to make it look the way I want to make it look, and it's kind of fun to have that imagination and bring it together. And so, the first thing, whether it's a photo or a video, is you want to correct it for the most part. The very important corrections as far as like the exposure, the contrast, the temperature of the photo. And so this one does look a little bit cooler than expected. And being that it was shot on here, so check this out. Take this little bit of information and try to hold on to it. So, as good as the camera is on an iPhone, it doesn't even come close to an actual DSLR camera that has the capabilities of shooting in RAW. And a RAW photograph is when it's taken, it stores so much information that you don't necessarily see. But after you go into the editing software like this, you just have so much more room to work. So, how do I get back to my screen sharing? Let's see, boom. And I'm going to stop the screen sharing. I'm going to go back to here really quick. So, that being said, I've got a big camera. I've got a really big camera. I've also got smaller cameras, and even those middle grade consumer, some would call it a prosumer level camera, are capable of taking just really exceptional photographs and storing all that information so that when you do take it into your computer and you open up that editing software, it has the potential to just look absolutely incredible with the adjustments that you apply to it. If you take an iPhone photograph, the formatting of it and the amount of information stored in that photograph, if you try to alter it, the information is not really there. Secondly, it would be very unlikely that, say, a iPhone that's intended for browsing the internet, watching your adult films, making phone calls, everything else that a cell phone is intended for, that is not, you can't expect it to perform like any other camera. However, today I'm going to show you a photo I took with an iPhone and just drop some effects on it. These are all things that you could potentially do at your own home. And yeah, so nobody's watching, but that's as to be expected, as this is the first one and it's unlisted and it's just for the patrons. So hopefully somebody will chime in. That'd be cool. All of you have real jobs. So okay, back to screen sharing, and let's click that. And boom, share, and open up Lightroom. Now we're back into Lightroom. So here's the photograph. Immediately, what I want to do first is correct those obvious things. Like I said, it may be a little bit cool. White balance. So we find the white point. The thing that's challenging is over here, it looks almost a little bit blue, but that's to be expected as it is the clouds. And over here on the actual white part, it is, you get some of that yellowish because the sun is over here in this corner and it's creating that golden glow just a little bit, not much, but just a little bit on here. So finding the white balance is going to come down to a personal preference, and I can go right over to the right-hand column and adjust it side to side. Ooh, but I really like it when I warm the image up. That's just me. Like, I love it. I think it brings out like warmth from the sun. Like, you know, you poke through the clouds and all of a sudden you get this like almost like oh moment, and it's just absolutely amazing to me. Not don't be I'm not too impressed by my shoes. I am wearing these exact shoes, by the way, at this very moment. That's neither here nor there. Anyway, so back to basic corrections. iPhone, okay, so here's the other thing you got to know is an iPhone is going to automatically, when you pull your iPhone out, you can't adjust the settings like you do in a DSLR, something a big camera. You've got all these knobs and buttons that are intimidating. It's like, what do I do? Well, an iPhone is going to do what it thinks it needs to do. That way, it's a lot easier for whoever's hand it's in, so they can just pull it out and tap the shutter button and take the photo. But it's not always right. And when you're flying, you just don't really need to be fumbling with that much. So I guess the iPhone can be a great thing. And fortunately, we're going to be editing this photograph so that when you get back to the ground and you open up your computer and you put it on there, you can put a little bit of your fairy dust on it, or your magic, whatever you want to call it, and edit the photograph so that it looks awesome to you and to whoever you share it with. Okay. I got a comment from somebody. Let me see if I can open this up. Hey, Anthony. Cool. Hey, Michael. I don't know if you're actually watching, but my live stream is indicating a no. But that's okay. We're going to keep going anyways. So I am going to head on over to the first, back to the immediate things, which is doing the immediate corrections. So we adjusted the temperature to replicate what it would have looked like most while we were there, or how it best, pleases our eyes. Oh, sweet. Somebody's in. This is great. I'm okay with Photoshop, but haven't found everything on Lightroom yet. Oh, perfect. Yeah, we are in Lightroom. So let me break down Lightroom for you then. I don't know how to pronounce your Natharine FPV. It must be Michael Mixer. I don't know. Let me know if that's correct. Anyways, so over here in the Lightroom column on the right, we have all of the adjustments, and these things are exclusive. Lightroom is exclusive for photography, where Photoshop is for creating special effects, way more in-depth things that go outside of the realm of photography. Photoshop, you could take multiple elements, bring them in. And Photoshop is where if I wanted to put a dragon in the sky, then I would go to Photoshop to do that. You simply are incapable of doing something like that in Lightroom. However, Lightroom, I always like to take a photo like this edit it, correct it, make it pleasing to the eye, and then you can, I'm going to show you a trick where you then take it into Photoshop, and then you can do some more corrections to it, or do those advanced things if that's what you'd like to do. If you're still here following along, let me know. I'm kind of nervous. This is my first time live. Sounds kind of funny. Like, this is my first time on camera. Okay. So as mentioned before, we're doing the basic corrections. That's what we're going to call it. Basic corrections. That is what it's called. And we just adjusted the temperature of it. We warmed it up slightly. This was the before, and then we warmed it up. We don't want it to be too warm. What I'm trying to see here, what I love about this photo so much, is that there's like this oranges glow over here in the bottom right-hand side of this photo. And then up here, there's like this cool down blue, which kind of makes it seem as though, which is true, that the sun is coming up over here. And to somebody who's viewing it, I think it definitely depicts that. So I want to like capitalize on that. I really want people to feel that whole like, we're above the clouds and it's warm over here, and then there's the cool clouds and you can tell that the sun is coming up. It's just really beautiful to me. And then what I like to do before we get over here to the left-hand column, this is like a magic section. I don't want to go into that yet. Thankfully, I didn't give it away too much by hovering my mouse over it. Will actually occasionally show you what I'm doing, but I want to get to that in just a second. But for now, what I want to do is just go with the basic corrections, and they are all centrally located right here in this right-hand column, and it's super convenient. So what I'm going to do after the color temperature, the tint is great. I don't really mind the tint. If I was to mess with the tint is affecting the greens and blues, and I liked it exactly where it was. So I'm going to hit Command Z just to bring it right back to where it was. Command Z, Control Z if you're on a Windows computer. And then I'm just going to work my way down. Exposure seems to be about right. So you know how, like I was saying, the iPhones, if you have a Galaxy Note, Samsung, any sort of phone, it is going to do whatever it thinks it needs to do, which is a blessing and a curse at the same time. It's a curse because it doesn't always get it right, like it didn't today. And so once again, back on it, I'm taking the information on the side. I really like this. I'm going to show you how you can quickly do it by coming over here to the left-hand column, and we've got presets. Presets, baby. Oh yeah, these things are awesome. So Lightroom, when you get it, it comes with a few presets, but the ones it come with are not necessarily my favorite. And you can order these outside of Lightroom itself. You can go online and find just websites that or artists or photographers who will sell their Lightroom preset packs for whether it's between $10 and $50, somewhere in that range. And some of most things will come with like a pack of them, so you'll have maybe 10 of them in a pack. Here I've got 6 in color and 2 in black and white, and this is on my new computer. On my laptop I have a lot more, but for all intents and purposes, I'm just going to go with the one I went with last time. Oh geez, this is tough. I'm going to go with this one. I love it. And so the before and after of this photo, it added some contrast. And if you notice, when you click on one of these presets over here, it is going to mess with everything over here. It's going to change how bright the highlights are, or how bright or dark. It's going to affect the luminosity of the shadows, whether they brighten them up or darken them. The cool thing about a preset is you can apply the preset that fits the way you want it to look on the main image. And then you can go on over here and adjust like the wheel. So in the shadows, this is clearly in the mountain right here is the biggest shadows. And we're losing some of the detail in the mountains because it was like this cutout, like this really cool, almost like horseshoe shaped mountain that is erected from, erected through the clouds. And it's just like really cool. But I like the contrast, but I also want to see some of the detail. So I'm going to lift those shadows a little bit just by going over the shadow section and literally increasing that number. And boom, now I've got more of that detail. So here's too much. Obviously, you're lifting those shadows way too much, so you're losing detail. And that's still too much. I like the darkness of it. I just want to barely see it. Boom. There it is. Let me go on over to the exposure real quick. maybe I can drop the exposure down and then raise the shadows a little bit more. Yeah, and then what about the highlights? I feel like the clouds are just a little too bright, and I'm gonna show you how I make the corrections for that. And, all right, sweet, it's Nathan, new to PPG. Can't wait to get a shot like this. Really appreciate the thought process you're taking us through. Oh, cool, yeah, man, totally, and welcome, and you're gonna flippin' love this sport. Whoo, man. Oh, and as just a quick update, as I continue to edit this photograph, the podcast has three episodes coming up, and unfortunately, there was kind of a family emergency in with one of the hosts, and so we will be recording very soon, and that episode should air next week. It's going to be awesome. I'm super excited. If you guys have been following along with the updates, you know exactly who I'm talking about, and it's just incredible to see the demographic range of those who can actually get into the sport, this wild thing we call paramotoring. Back to the photograph. All right. So as mentioned, the last thing I left off on was like these highlights. If you raise highlights too much, you're going to lose some of the detail. And absolutely, yes, family first, no joke. Whites. So the whites. So interestingly enough, if you were to go to Instagram.com, let's imagine you have a business in paramotoring, right? Let's imagine you have a business in paramotoring and you want to capture the attention of individuals with your paramotoring photos, or even if you don't have a business and you just want to blow people's minds and be like, whoa, look at what I do. This is really cool. Check it out and use it as a way to get your grandma involved in paramotoring, whatever it may be. A lot of images on Instagram do something that's called like crushing the whites. And it's just kind of creates this almost like, oh, who the hell? I'm getting a phone call. Not now. Sorry. I am going to continue with my live broadcast. Thanks for your patience. Once again, this is first time go. Anyways, here we go. So you can crush the whites. And what that's going to do is it's literally if you were to take the whites and you max them to 100%, that means that the brightest part of the image, is going to be maxed out. Like it will be is bright of a luminance value before it would exceed the ability to retain any information within that area. So that being said, what a lot of professional photographers and those who are like widely recognized in their photography work do is they actually lower that. It almost makes like for a more like a subtle look at me type of a feel. Try that out. Try that out next time by just simply lowering. You're not lowering the entire exposure. If I was to lower the entire exposure like this, you're lowering every bit. Every pixel is getting darker. Every single pixel in the shot is getting darker. If I raise it, it's getting all the way brighter. Basically, what this is doing over here in this rectangular shaped thing in the right-hand column, this is called your tone curve. And if you were to go from left to right, the leftmost part of this from bottom to top, the leftmost part is showing you the shadows, the middle is the midtones, and the right-hand side is the highlights. So if there's a shaded part of the image, it's going to be displayed here. It's pretty confusing, but for the most part, just recognize that over here in the highlights, what we're doing is we are just simply softening them. That's a good word for it, softening those, so that when somebody's scrolling through Paramotor Facebook page and they stumble across this photo, it's not like screaming at them. It is saying, hey, look at this. This is really cool. Hopefully that was a good characterization of how my photo would sound if it could talk. Okay, so moving right along, and then we have this tone curve, and tones are like something so cool. It kind of gives it this like just moodiness. A lot of people refer to the tone as the mood, and there's not much more that I'm going to do to that. I'm going to see if I can adjust the mid-tones right here. Oh yeah, and bring out, boom, look at that. Look at how cool that is. Just by grabbing the middle section of the tone curve, I can adjust the tone or the luminance value of the things that are in the middle of the luminance. It's not bright, it's not dark, just the middle things. Bring it down just a little bit, and it appears, as you can see, to give it just a little more contrast, and I really dig it. I like it. Down here in Lightroom, the other thing that you can do after adding a preset is you can adjust the sharpness, and sharpening can take a soft image from an iPhone, right? An iPhone does not have the sharpest images, despite what they may claim to be able to do, but they don't. So what we can do over here is I'm going to hold the Option key under here in this sharpening section. So here's when you open it up, you slide down the right-hand column, and you've got sharpening right here. And I'm going to hit the Option button and then click on the amount. And then as I slide, it may be difficult for you to view on this live stream, but you don't want to go too extreme with the sharpening, right? Because then you can get just this weird little effect. Ugh, so cool. So cool. I'm going to do before and after. Before, we're going to raise it back up to where it approximately was. And you do introduce a lot more grain into the photo. But if you were thinking of, some of my most favorite photographs of all time are, no pun intended, in Time magazine. And those historic photographs usually have quite a bit of grain introduced to them. So if you think of like old World War II photos, I don't want to get carried away with like the theory behind photographs, but there's something really nostalgic, I think, something just a neat feel about a photograph when it finds a nice balance of grain in it. If you notice my videos that I film, one of my tricks, I guess, or signature things, is I do introduce grain into it, even if it's like a very clear image. And I love the way grain looks. And then you go to masking. So in that same category, you've got amount, radius. So that's the amount of sharpening, the radius of each bit of the sharpening, the detail, and the masking. And basically the thing I mess with the most is the amount, how much sharpening am I applying? And then the masking, what am I applying the sharpening to? And you may be saying, well, what does that mean? Well, if you hold the Option key or the Alt key, I think it would be on a Windows PC, and you click that and you slide it over, the highlighted things are what is going to be getting the sharpening applied to. You don't want to sharpen an entire image. You want to sharpen the things you want, like the fine lines of it. So let's just say that. And I'm going to bring it back a little bit to there. And I dig it. Okay. So if you're still here, holler at me. First time go. So if you continue to work your way down, there's some other effects, but this is just like a basic rundown of how you can edit your photographs and then share them on the Facebook page and get some really killer results. I think this one's almost at like 300 people enjoy it, which is exciting. It's a nice contribution to the sport for whatever reason you may want it to be. I leave the grain out of it in Lightroom because I then take it over into Photoshop. Fun. What you could do, if you like the way that this image looks, you can go ahead and head on down to this bottom portion. Oops, not there, but here, and select the image that you've been editing. You can right click on it like this, and it will bring up export. So if you were done with the photograph, you could totally export it, but that's not what I want to do because I want to try and recreate the photo that I created on my Instagram account and on the Paramotor Facebook page. So instead of going to export, I'm going to go ahead and slide on up into edit in. And if you have Photoshop, it will automatically populate. Edit in Adobe Photoshop CC 2019. I'm going to click on that. And it's going to ask me, whoa, this screen sharing thing is so weird. All right. So now I am in Photoshop with what is already a pretty cool image in my opinion. And we can continue to just kind of like play around with the photo. And I'm going to show you a down and dirty kind of like fine detailing of how I am going to make this photo look really cool. So one of the things I did is I took the clouds and I raise them to the very top of the image, and I also added more mountains back here. Oh, you don't be mad at me for doing this. I totally did. I put more mountains in the background, and so I think it just gives it a really neat kind of look and feel. And I did that by coming over here on the left-hand column of Photoshop is the healing brush. And it's kind of like I could use the clone stamp, but I'm not. I'm using the healing brush. I'm going to go over to the clouds, and I'm once again pressing Option and holding it, and then it's going to duplicate whatever it is that I have. You have to make sure that you have replace on rather than normal. It needs to be replace up here in the mode, and then you're going to hit that Option button, click on a part that you want it to replicate, and then I can increase the brush size and start kind of like punching in some clouds so that it raises the cloud layer here. And boom. It's starting to really fill in that sky. Now, don't get me wrong. The sky is cool. The sky is cool. But I think part of the success of the photograph is because there was just like this wave of clouds coming in, and it gives it kind of this magical, like, I don't know, like a fantasy type feel. And there's a lot of additional settings that you can play with in this. Once again, I'm going to hold Option, copy this mountain, and I could bring this part of the mountain over here or see where it fits. It's kind of like you're building a little puzzle piece, which is really cool. Yes, and by adding the dragon, yeah, and then we can recreate the kingdoms within Game of Thrones and add Khaleesi's dragon up here with Jon Snow riding the back of it. Yeah, look at this. So we could do something really weird and just add like a mountain like emerging from the clouds right here by doing something like that. Obviously, that doesn't make sense quite yet because we haven't covered up that mountain. But it is. It's kind of like child's play doing these photograph things. And ideally, take your time with it. Have fun with it. If you rush it, it may not turn out how you want it to turn out. And so, as they say, you can't rush art. There's some truth to that. Okay, so I see what I need to do here, which is adjust the hardness of it. And the size is pretty big and spacing. Okay. So now that I adjusted the hardness of it, what it basically did is I like that. I don't know why I get so excited over a little photograph, but the funny thing is as you're editing it, you'll probably pick up on any sort of imperfections. And the more time you spend with it, the more you can kind of like sand out those little rough spots. But ooh, I don't know. I kind of dig it. I mean, I like how there's this darker gray over here, because if you remember correctly, down here there's like this warmth, and it's contrasted up here by this darkness. It may seem, yeah, like I was saying, it may seem like a lot. However, I think when it comes to editing a photograph, the details are like on a subconscious level when somebody views it. And if you're in business, every little bit of it should count. Let me see if I can take off that. Okay. Every bit of it should count, because each person who likes that photo or has an impression left on them is going to remember what you created, which is super important, especially for like individuals who have a flight school. And marketing like this goes a long ways for business individuals, for individuals who are just doing it for the fun of it. It could be that lasting impression. Oh yeah, here we go. We're filling in that sky. It's fun. Ooh, look at this. Make these mountains back here kind of feel, ooh, just so foggy and eerie. I'm gonna touch that spot right there. Oh, cool. Very cool. So it doesn't look like much. And I'm going to get rid of this blue, right? So I'm going to show you how I do that really quick before heading over here and filling up this with more mountains, like we're just heading into the pits of Mount Doom. If you're not a fantasy fan, I apologize. I do like fantasy, not all fantasy, but I'm going to keep doing what I was saying I was going to do. Okay. I'm heading over to the sponge tool. And if you click on the sponge tool, you've got the sponge tool is what we want conveniently. However, you've also got dodge, which is going to lighten certain parts of it. So say I click on the dodge and I want to lighten some of these shadows over here. Let's just say the midtones, because that'll make it pop just a little bit more. And over here in the exposure, it's like, how much do you want to make that pop? And I don't want much because subtle is the key, right? Subtle is very important. And I'm just going to lightly brush in these so that some of the rocks have a little more glow, and it's super subtle, but it makes all the difference. If you start messing with the shadows, keep this in mind. If you start messing with the shadows option, if I was to go from midtones to shadows, I'm going to hit this. Let me turn it up so that you may be able to see it better on the live stream. I'm going to go over to 40%, let's say, and then hit enter. And then over here in the shadows, it may brighten it a little too much, but it kind of complements it in this set. Oh, I like that. Oh, this is a learning experience for me. So I really want to bring out the rock. The rock is kind of like this central focus point of, oh yeah, that's cool. Maybe it's too much. I gotta remind myself sometimes. Subtle is key. And then you're most safe by just messing with the midtones, because if you mess with the highlights, you could highlight it so much to the point where you lose the detail in these things. And I'm going to drop it back down. It's still set to 43%. I'm going to go back down to 10%. 10%, hit the enter key. Take my brush over here, and hopefully this isn't too much. Yeah, I'm going to just touch up. Ooh, where the sun is hitting the back of this mountain. Oh my gosh, that's cool. I get excited. Sorry. Okay. And I'm going to zoom in here. And what I'm basically going to do is it just comes down to a matter of like realistic lighting. Where would the lighting be hitting if you wanted to kind of like make something stand out? And if the sun was coming from over here, it could realistically hit the ridge line here. And so I'm just going to brighten this up, and I can click it, release it. So if you click it, you can release it to like kind of like reset it, if that makes sense. So once again, lower the size of the brush because I just really want to hit this ridge. So it's kind of like the sun is cresting these tops. And oh yeah. That's sweet. Okay. Another point I want to mention in this photograph is that I'm working with two colors. So something that can stop somebody in people's tracks are images that are like well balanced. And you can't just have like a flurry of colors all over and expect it to be balanced. So the two main colors that we're really working with in this photograph is the blues, as you see in the pants, and you see in the sky over here. Even though we are going to close off the sky, we want to create a natural cool versus warm feeling, which is emulated by the blue and the orange goldish. So let's do that. Yeah. Okay. Somebody, when I posted, also said I wasn't wearing socks, which isn't true. Here's for the record to really prove a point. Those are socks right there. Thanks. Point proven. Back to the editing session. All right. So we've highlighted the crest of this mountain, and anywhere where the sun is shining through, like here, we're just kind of hitting that. I'm clicking on the mouse and bringing it through and hitting these mountains over here, brightening it up ever so slightly, because if it becomes too much, you're going to distract people, and it's not what we want. And we could, that looks good. What do you say? Does that look good? If it looks good, holla. And anywhere where the sun is already hitting, we're going to just tap that. Boom. Cool. Look at that. Very cool. And the other thing I want to do is, because these are within the colors that I'm working with, now I'm actually going to go over here to what I originally intended, which was to grab the sponge tool. The sponge is what's going to affect the saturation. You got two options here, folks. You can desaturate an area with the brush, or you can saturate it, meaning bring more color to it or take some of the color out of it. And what I'd like to do is desaturate this section. I want to lose some of the blue, oddly enough, because I'm going to add it later more consistently. And then I want to saturate, I think. We're going to see that we're going to work this one together. I'm going to saturate the highlight, the golden crest, because I'm telling you guys, when I was flying, that's how I saw it. That's how I remember it. And that's how I want to share it. So I'm coming over here to the saturation tool. And once again, I don't want it to be too strong. I'm going to go to 25%. And I'm going to hit that enter key. And Nathan says, that's great bringing out the details on that mountain. Who'd have thought an iPhone could capture so much? And it can, and it can't. It can. It totally can. You got to work with it a little bit. You got to squeeze the milk out of this photograph. But once you've got these tools at your disposal, I'm telling you, you can make something really cool with an iPhone photo. There's a couple other ones that I've done that I've posted that were shared around. In fact, I shared one photo on Instagram that had like 1,000 views. It wasn't on my personal page, but it just got reposted and reposted, and it was of the mountains. Oddly enough, people seem to really like mountains and flying. So I've got the saturation on, and I've dropped it down to 0.25%, 25%. I'm going to lower the brush size, and I want to bring out that golden hue. And Nathan, just to point out, like as mentioned, you can't, your iPhone isn't going to be like, let's get jiggy with it and just highlight the peaks of the mountains. That'd be really cool. Maybe in within the next 100 years, it'll get really creative like that. But for now, we gotta get on top of it and bring out some of the juice. Wring it out. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, it creates this orange. Oh, this is so much fun for like a basic. I hope I'm not sounding cheesy. I just really have fun like doing this because it's like I can't paint, right? I mean, I can draw like okay, but a photograph is like, we're going to give you something to work with, right? This is a photograph. We're going to give you, like a really good start. All right. You got like a decent photo to start with. Oh, it's subtle, but it's just so delicious in my opinion. Oh man. Oh, in the shadows when they get blue and cold, it's like this warm, it's like warm versus cold in this photo, but a really subtle version of it. So once again, yeah, like I'm just bringing out some of the color, making it pop on this ridgeline. Oh my gosh, guys. Oh man, I hope that's squeeze the milk out of it. Michael says, yes, squeeze it. So yeah, we're really bringing out the golden sky, and I'm gonna color this up. Oh no, that was too much. Control Z. I liked it without it. So now that I've colored that, I'm going to touch up these mountains, bring a little more pop to just the tips of it, right? Because as it sinks into the clouds, I want it to kind of fade out just a little bit, right? And then over here in the mountains, we'll start to mess with that just a bit because the mountains, once again, are the centerpiece of this image. Oh, yeah. Sweet. I don't know if you can see it on the live stream. Let me zoom in real quick. Right here, we've messed with the ridge, and it's starting to come to life. I'm going to show you some cool stuff. We're not done yet. All right. So that's that. I'm going to go over from the saturate to the desaturate now. And I'm feeling like there's a little bit of blue popping out back here. But once again, I want this to feel like a storm that we're heading in right in this section. Hopefully you can see it on the live stream. There is some blue in here, and I'm probably going to add it back in a different way using a layer. But as for now, I want it gone. I want it gone. Okay. And to be careful with it, I am going to lower that even more, increase my brush size. Let me zoom out again. And we're just messing with this corner, and I'm hitting that. Oh yeah. Bye-bye. Bye-bye blue. And it's just this dark gray. It's like this illuminated gray. Okay. And then I'm going to hit this over here. Just a little bit of that. Boom. Check that out. Ooh, the storm is rolling in. But we're in the safety zone, right? In this photo, we're in the safety zone. The light has emerged. And so I'm going to go back over to the option. Actually, I'm going to go back over to the clone tool, or the healing brush tool. If I was to click and hold it, I can do patch, healing brush. It's on healing brush. Clone is actually right here, clone stamp. Let me just click on clone stamp so you can see what it is that I'm talking about. I can once again select a section of it and then increase the size of it. And it's basically doing the same thing, but it's set to normal. Yeah, I mean, what do you think? I don't know. It's just what I've done. I've used the healing brush in the past. And yeah, it's what I'm familiar with. Oh, uh, yeah, I'll continue. I almost lost my train of thought. I was just going to say it's really cool. Today, Kylo Glee became a patron of the Paramotor podcast and the content that I'm creating. And that's like a huge thing for me. I'm just going to keep messing with this as I share this. For Kylo Glee to become a patron, it's just neat. Every patron is super, super humbling for me. Like I called my parents on the phone, and it's funny. You don't hear the side of me on the actual podcast. I kind of take on a little bit of a lighthearted, arrogant side to try and encourage the other hosts to really ask questions and come off as stupid, because, and it's all in my mind, it's kind of like a strategic thing. Like, well, tell me more about paramotoring. I need to know. We need to know. And when I had originally gotten started with it, my dad, I'm just going to head back over to this healing brush. I told my dad today on the phone, I was like, Dad, you're not going to believe it. I've got 53 patrons supporting the Paramotor podcast and the YouTube content. And he was like, that's horseshit. He thought that was interesting. All right. So he's like one of those grumpy dads that's like, will say I love you with a huge grin on his face. Okay. back to this. All right, going back to the option button where I can select the area that I want to copy, and I'm going to take it on up into here. I don't really want to mess with the mountains too much. Like, I kind of like the emergence of it, and I feel if I copy this mountain, people are going to immediately like identify that. So I can take something like this, I think, and just kind of drop it there. Boom. And oh yeah, that's cool. I'm creating my own mountains now, and we'll call it El Paso, of course, because unfortunately, the folks here in El Paso don't get out as often as I would have expected with how beautiful the landscape can be. But yeah, I can definitely still call these the Franklin Mountains, and people honestly wouldn't be the wiser. All right. So what's the difference? What's the difference between replace and normal? So if we go over to replace, we've been in replace. If we go over to normal, what it's going to do is it's going to kind of like find a balance between the two. So if I was to click it right here, it kind of like mushes it together, and I don't like it. So that may be the default setting. So just make sure you set it to replace, and you will be A-okay. Once again, I'm going to copy one of the peaks of the mountains, and I'm going to bring the brush size up and see if this works. There we go. And we are going to, I need to adjust the hardness, because if you see right here, if we zoom in, can I zoom in? I can't zoom in right now because I've got this brush tool out. On the edge of the circle, it starts to fade away the opacity because it's a soft application with the brush. But if I go to the hardness value of it and I turn it up, you won't get near, you'll still like be able to carry the mountain through, which I think is really cool. So if I go here and kind of connect the pieces like a puzzle, as mentioned before, we can start to build our very own mountain. And then you, of course, want to go back and fill in some of the clouds. So I'm going to drop the brush size, come over here. Let's test this out. And I just want to make sure, let me see, I'll find a different spot. You got to kind of like search for the spot until it makes sense. So here. Oh, yeah. It got quiet. It got quiet. He's thinking, everybody. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to actually continue with the cloud coverage as we progress through this photograph. And reduce the hardness of it. So why do I reduce the hardness? Here's an example. If I had the hardness all the way up, boom, I just painted a circle, and you can definitely see that circle on it. So you do want to lower the softness value of it as you're doing this, and bring that hardness down. It doesn't say softness, it just gives you hardness. So you bring that way down, and then you can actually kind of like paint in or replicate the sky. If I bring it over here, what it's going to do is you can see, I'm pointing at the screen like you can see me point at the screen. You can see this white arrow. I'm going to erase this as I'm just like trying to get you to see this white arrow. But you can see the white arrow right there. It is copying what exactly what I'm doing, where the brush tool is, where the white arrow is. If that makes sense, let me know. Hopefully it does. Yeah, I'm going to undo that. I am going to bring that there. And then, as mentioned before, kind of like paint in this sky. And here's in a bit, I can just go to desaturating it so that it doesn't necessarily appear as though there's more clouds rolling in, just that the sky is still desaturated. Let's go back to the overall image of it. It's pretty cool. IMO. And let's see. Boom, shakalaka. Okay, I'm going to soften that one more time. Also, if you have any questions about Photoshop or Lightroom, this is a good place to ask. So definitely don't be afraid to ask your questions. I'll try to answer it in the best that I can. And okay, that's pretty good. And I'm gonna just take care of that blue using the saturation tool. And because clouds have detail, right? Blue sky doesn't have detail. Blue sky is just like a solid color over here. And then, but even in these like gray clouds, there's still some detail because there's dark patches, there's lighter patches within this, which the blue clear sky lacks entirely. So instead, I'm going to leave it like that and just have it fade to kind of like a gray sky. That way, we're working with, once again, the warmth with the cool effect. And to do that, I'm going back over to the sponge tool. I've already got that open, desaturate, and let's just head on over and kind of like paint it in and get to work on that. I'm going to zoom on in. And once again, paint it, trying not to affect the mountains too much. And just the size, the hardness is all the way soft. I'm going to take it there. And yeah, there we go. Bringing that in. So we're not done. This is not the end. We haven't even applied any effects to it quite yet. But we're leaving in some of the blue as though there's a hint to like maybe there's a bright day around the corner. And remember, all of this is telling a story to the individuals who are eventually going to see it. So, all right, there we go. We kind of like took that blue out of the sky. The blue was a little too much for me. Oh, right on, right on. And once again, because it was taken on an iPhone, it's not the sharpest of quality, but we do have a sharpening tool that works, in my opinion, better than the one, and in the opinion of professionals, better than Lightroom does. So I'm going to take that and I am going to just kind of like brush in some of that. I leave the strength at 50. If you go too strong, you're going to start seeing like this weird artifact taking place. And so I'm just kind of going along the rocks. And that way it can make the rocks pop just a little bit more. Pop rocks. All right. And you kind of, as a rule of thumb, want to stay along the edges of it. Like you don't want to try and sharpen everything because once again, that introduces a lot of noise into the image. But right along the ridge of it is like the appropriate area to add some sharpening. And it just brings out that line. It separates things. The edges, it's edge sharpening is what we're basically doing. And over here, there's a lot of detail. So if we're just kind of like painting over where there is detail, that's cool. I'm not even going to worry about the background mountains for the moment. I may even blur those ever so slightly just to, once again, bring out this centerpiece of a rock cutout, which I think is really cool. Yeah, we'll give that a shot. Nathan says, do you have any tips or preferences on the amount of saturation? I don't know if it's a difference between screens, but end up overdosing it quite often. Oh, dude, great question. Awesome question. Like when it comes to saturation, it all comes down to style, really. For me, I like to make things a little bit exaggerated, but to the point where it fools people, right? And when I got started in photo editing, here's like a interesting fact. When I got started in photo editing, it was really challenging to judge colors, like because it's one thing. I'm just hitting this corner with the desaturation tool as we speak. When editing photographs, color for me is oddly challenging. I had to memorize the color answers in order to pass my FAA flight medical examination when I hit the first time that I took it, by, you know, signing a deal with the devil in the doctor's office there and saying, "Please, please let me pass." I think it for whatever reason, it was the dot test where you have the circle with all the dots in it. It was just I struggled with it. Um, but yeah, it's definitely easy to oversaturate things, and I think the trick to that, or at least what I've done in the past, oh man, is that not cool? I think it's cool. Um, is practice. Like it really does come down to that. It's practicing it, sharing the photos, and seeing what people respond to. Because the way that your eyes see it, Nathan, or anybody else, is going to be unique in a sense, uh, compared to the way other people see it. But maybe your difference in the way that you see it, you may find it and edit a photograph one day that just looks like interesting. Um, that it, other people see it the way that they see it, and just as a whole, the people who view your photographs may just be turned on to it in a completely platonic, non-sexual way. People will really like it, and uh, at least that was the case for me. As I started, I would like way oversaturate things, and then just kind of realize where I needed to keep an eye on myself when it came to editing photographs. I may be doing it or overdoing it right now, but yeah, just keep up with what the feedback you get. There we go. All right. Um, and Michael, you're partially colorblind too. I fail that test. I have to ask to take the practical. Oh, no kidding. Oh, that's super cool. Yeah, that's neat that that's an option where you can actually do it and say, "See, I can do it." I think that that's a great thing. It's like stupid test. Woo. Okay. So this is pretty cool. We've got the sharpening. Let me get that sharpening tool back out really quick. So the only other like piece that is kind of like of detail, and is, even though I love these shoes and people sometimes give me crap for it, I like these shoes. These were the first pair of shoes I ever flew a paramotor with. I took them to training. They looked a hell of a lot nicer then, and I'm actually sharpening this as I speak. But they're like my lucky shoes at this point, and so why not keep rocking them? I mean, once my feet are off the ground, they are perfectly functional on the ground. The sole of the shoe just like flaps open. It's pretty bad, but no, I think it gives it character. I mean, it's not a trendy thing. It's just the pair of shoes that I grab for because I don't know, they're near and dear to my heart. So I like to sharpen these and bring them out just a little bit, not because they are these shoes, but because they are the feet, and it kind of brings out. So here's one other bit of interesting theory behind why people may be receptive to this photo, is because when you think of paramotoring, if you don't already actively fly, paramotoring is definitely unique in the sense of flying. And I think people gravitate towards it because of what this photo portrays. It's like my feet are hanging in the sky above this cloudy mountain landscape, and I there's no humble way to say it. It's really cool, just that we are able to do that. Or if you haven't started yet, that we all will be together in this here very soon, and that's awesome to me. So yeah, just sharpening the feet up a little bit. I do want to get rid of this red. It may not seem important, but I am going to take the red out of that. And what I could do is go over here and go over and create a new layer where I just get rid of the red. But since this is supposed to be kind of basic, I'm just going to go over here to the desaturation tool and literally desaturate that red. And you'll see it right here. When I make it about the size of the letters, even smaller, and we'll leave it at that. I just don't want it to be like a distraction. it may not come all, I mean, I may not take it all the way out, but I just don't want it to become like the color that wasn't meant to be there. You see that? Like, it makes a difference in my opinion. Like, you've got, now we're still working with the orange, green, and blue. They're kind of like this trio of colors that works really well. I'm not the expert in color, but I do know for a fact, if you look at a color wheel, the way it works is, if I open Final Cut Pro really quick, just for a color demonstration, the color contrast, like, it's really important that you try to bring out. So Nathan, maybe this pertains to you. If you are going to bring out colors, try to bring out, oh, here's the video of flying the other day. That was a lot of fun. And if you have not been watching the tutorials, get on that. It's a lot of fun to see some of this cool flying shindigs. Oh god, it's gonna lag. Ugh, the nightmares of running multiple programs at the same time. But yeah, ultimately it was this flying over those mountains right there. Okay, so I'm just going to show you the color wheel really quickly before we jump right back into that and finish up that photo. I'm going to go to Windows, and I'm going to go to Workspaces, Color and Effects, and then I'm going to go to Vector Scope over here, and let me just make that big with a single one, and then go to Vector Scope. And so here we have like colors on the wheel, and this is relevant because, and I say this because, anything on the opposing side, if you got like one color that really stands out, like say a blue, then it would be ideal to work with the colors immediately across from it. And check that out. What photos are we working with in the photo in Photoshop? We are working with blue and this orange and green, right? Dude, we're nailing it. We're nailing it. And as subtle as it may seem, and if it was just the full array of colors, these are like your primary colors, but if you were just working with like every color under the rainbow and not just these like, big time colors, the color would probably be like flipped right through on Facebook or Instagram, whatever it is that you're working on. So right back over here, it's subtle. You see how it's like not that saturated, but it's subtle. Yeah. So here's what I propose we do, which is what I did in the last one. I'm gonna like throw on this gradient, and I do that now that I've kind of got the photo how I want it. Oh, one last thing. I'm gonna go over here to blur and see if this will work. The strength is way too high. I'm gonna set it to 20%, and then just kind of like blur out the background just a little bit. Okay, just gonna blur that just ever so slightly, as if to give these details there. That's all I'm doing. Don't worry. That's it. And that I lied because I'm blurring out as if the iPhone were actually capable of depth of field. That if that were like what the camera was focused on, anything closer to it would eventually go out of focus, and anything behind it would go out of focus. Okay, as we wrap it up, we're just going to throw on a couple of cool little tricks that I like to do, which would be to come over here in this right-hand column. If you're familiar with Photoshop, over here, you have, you can add another layer. It says create new fill or adjustment layer. And I am going to select a solid color. This is just a quick way to, you'll recognize it in some of my other images in the past. And I'm going to select solid color. Where am I? There it is, right at the very top. And what I'm going to do is I am going to lower the opacity. I don't really care what color it is right now. I'm going to lower the opacity to 0. And then I am going to click on that, and it already gives me the little color dropper where I can select the color and check that out. Boom. So it's got this, I just selected the orange because I want to work with these oranges and blues right here. And I'm going to just try and make that pop just a little bit more and work with it. We'll eventually find the right hue, but at least we know the general hue that we're working with. I'm going to click OK and then raise that back up. And boom, you've got this now. Oh, man, that's cool. Okay. But that being said, I don't think we want it to be in the shadows or over here, because we're going to add one more layer. And what I'm going to do is erase where it's affecting the image in the shadows. And doing that, you would think maybe you can grab the eraser tool. That's not the case. You come over here, right next to here in the right-hand column. You're going to come over here and click on this, and that's going to allow you to basically affect that layer by hitting that and then clicking on the brush tool. And the way the brush tool works with a layer is over here, it's a solid white. This is kind of like a white layer showing you what's affected. And if you use a black pen on this layer or a black brush, it will literally take that out. And we are going to mess with that right now and see where we can erase some of the golden orange to create the image the way that we would like it to look, right? And I'm going to lower the opacity just a little bit. Boom. So it's not like too Instagrammy, like fake, in a sense. Okay, so yeah, there we go. I got the black and the opacity is set to 18. I'm going to crank that to 20, I think. And then I can pen in, check that out. I'm like literally taking off where the orange is. And I don't want the orange to be in the shadows because I want to really bring out where the sun is casting this like golden glow. And I'm like hitting where the contours are within the rocks. And it's really giving like this neat little 3D effect. And I'm also going to lower it right here for the clouds. I'm going to be a little more careful on the clouds. Ooh, and it creates that blue. Epic. Change the size and just keep penciling out the areas where, and then hit it again and again. Now it's a little hard to see right now. I don't know if this is possible. Magnify. Can I use a magnifying magnifier? Magnify. Okay, I was gonna try and zoom in so that you could see this, but clearly I don't have the tool to do that. But if you could see this over here in this white patch, you can see where I'm painting on the black onto this layer, and it's erasing it from that. And I'm just trying to remove some of it from the shadows. Anything that a shadow is cast on, I am subtly erasing where that orange solid layer is. And if you see here, because I want the things that are illuminated by the sun to be cast in this golden effect, and the shadows to have a cooler vibe to them. Savvy? Savvy. All right, right over here. You are supposed to be. There we go. Hell yeah. There's a little bit here. This is getting really nitpicky, but it will make the difference all in the end. We've still got some shadow on this foot. And yeah. And boom. It also gives it a more of a 3D pop when you look at it. It's pretty cool, guys. If you ever, as patrons, if you guys ever have questions about how this, like you're trying to do your own personal project, shoot me a message and I definitely will help you out. Hitting that some more. And I'm not done. I'm actually going to throw in a gradient erase on this so that trying to multitask. Speak, Anthony, speak, or forever hold your peace. So that it's so that we're not affecting so much of this part over here. So what I'm going to do for that, let me hit this. Just hit these rocks just a little more in this fine detail in these little nooks and crannies. We're almost done. Really giving it this like Tony pop. Tony, I said my nickname. Okay. Boom, those rocks. Cool. There we go. And then I'm going to head over here to the gradient, and this is pretty neat how this works. I can just draw a line, and oops, went the wrong way with that. Sorry. There we go. Oh yeah, check that out. Before, that's the before. I'm going to draw this line from this way to this way. Oh man, that's pretty cool, guys. I'm gonna definitely post this photo on the Patreon. And we could, let's see how it would look just as a final portion of it. See if we add a little blue into this side. It's going to be really subtle, but I'm going to hit here and create one more new layer, solid color. And it's already at a blue. And I'm going to hit OK, lower the opacity of it. And I still have the gradient tool out. And this time I'm going to go this way to this way. It's because I don't want to mess with my oranges. My trackpad is too short. And I'm actually going to crank that up. Nathan says, always used Adobe Suite. Yeah. And for photos, I don't do it enough and spend money on it. I use GIMP when I need to use it. Oh, no, I've never heard of that. I will definitely look into it, though. I use Adobe. For me, it's... let's see, right there. Oh, yeah, cool. And let's see real quick. I'm going to get back to that, I promise. And I'm going to drop this to a darker shade. Sorry, just doing the final touch on this. And hit OK. Opacity. And gradient. I've never heard of that program. Cool. And let's do contrast one more time. And do cool, huh? There it is. I dig it. Yeah, no, okay, there we go. So here's the photo. I'm going to go ahead and head on back to the screen so I can chat with you guys face to face. How do I do this? This is my first time. Thanks so much for being patient. And stop screen sharing. Whew, face is red just thinking about it. What's up, guys? So yeah, no, I wish I could flip this camera around, but this is the one that's built into my computer. But basically what I do is I use Adobe Lightroom and I use Adobe Photoshop for my photography type stuff. And I started just with Lightroom. For the kit, it is $9.99 a month, $10 a month, I think it is. And I use it when I create like thumbnails for any YouTube videos most of the time, or if I'm editing photographs for Instagram. By the way, the Paramotor podcast Instagram page is not actually one where I share like my photographs. I did happen to share this one on that Instagram account, but the actual one that I use for like photography type stuff is at Anthony K. Vella, and I keep it there. But there are other ones. This is something I did used to use Adobe Premiere for video editing purposes. Back when I first got started as a kid making little videos. And then I went over to Final Cut Pro because I have a Mac and the workflow of it is much faster. And a lot of individuals who do prosumer or professional level videography do, many of them do make the change over to Final Cut Pro because you have access to so many things. And it just seems to be a more efficient process. Adobe Premiere is a super powerful beast of a machine, but it's like you can never stop learning with Adobe Premiere because there's just so much to it. The same could be said for Final Cut Pro. I just think the interface is what it is. The interface when it comes to video editing is it just communicates so much better to the user on things as far as for whatever you're trying to accomplish. It's easier. And YouTube has excellent videos on how to create that stuff. I suppose what I do with Patreon is try to take the things that are more practical in the sense of if you're making a paramotor video, whether you're using a cell phone like I did for the last video, or if you're doing like a little broadcast setup in here, this isn't actually the setup. This is just like a screen sharing on photo editing session. But there's a ton of things that you can do to really make your videos stand out, and that's all comes down to like whether or not you're interested in it. So I mean, it's fun. Michael says, didn't know they did it as a SaaS model. Thought you had to drop cash for the full license. The thing is like with Photoshop, and Lightroom and Adobe Premiere, anything in the Adobe suite, as you may already know. I may not understand exactly what you're asking or what you're saying, but yeah, it is. It's like you're you're licensing the software, where Final Cut Pro is a one-time purchase upfront, and it comes with all of the updates. Software as a service. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. I learned something here. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, it is a service that you're paying for. And to me, I like to pay for things one time, especially with the podcast. The podcast is like way more expensive than I had initially thought. And then after I started the podcast is when I started the Patreon. Is like, oh God, this is more expensive than I had originally anticipated. But yeah, it's definitely much more preferred for me when I'm able to just do one payment upfront and be done with it, because you can't find that very often with podcasting services like Libsyn. If you wanted a tutorial on how to do podcasting, I just want to teach people everything that I do, and so that more content on paramotoring can be put out there in a neat way. Yeah. Anywho's, I hope, let's see if I can pull up this photo really quick. Hi, Leandra. She's in the other room and she's watching this. I'm going to adjust this contrast. Oh, Nathan, by the way, if you're still watching, sometimes if you click out of a photograph and then you go back into it, you'll see like a very immediate thing when you look at it after letting your eyes rest for like a few minutes and then coming back to it. Like when I clicked into this, I know immediately that I want to bring the contrast up, which is exactly what I'm about to do. Right there. And then maybe lower the brightness a hair. -1 and increase the contrast to right about there. Right on, dudes and dudettes. Let's go ahead and save this, export it, open it, and I'll leave it on that screen as I say goodbye. Once again, big thanks to Kylo Glee and all of our other like awesome David. David is like one of the coolest patrons that I know. Thank you to for keeping me company as I edited this photograph. I'd love to do this more. If you have a photograph, send it to me and I'll edit it on a live stream. Just send me like a bunch of them and let me pick, and I will edit one of them on the live stream. As you export this, make sure you export it not just in its default ones, but in the format. You're going to go up to JPEG, and I've got it saving to my desktop. I'm just going to put mountains and save it to my desktop. Save it. It's going to ask me the quality. High is fine. Hit OK. And then we're going to go ahead and head into the desktop, open that photograph. Oh, I didn't go back to the screen sharing for you guys. You're like, what are you talking about? But let me go back to screen sharing really quick. Screen share, share, and it's going to do that wigging out thing as I make my way over to that photograph. Called Mountains. Where is it? Mountains. There it is. And there's our mountain shot, guys. There it is. Cool. It's ready to share with the group. Hope you guys liked it. That's what it is. And Yeah. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for coming out to the internet. I'll see you guys later.